She walks in with the most confused. You're not the professor. Am I in the right room? I want to tell you about one of the first college documents I walked in. I did. This is ELA 114 class pathology. Oh, I was like, if that happened to you, you're not the only one. Very class and have a very good weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Hey there. How is everyone? Well, it's not everyone is here. How about everyone who is here? How are they? Still vertical? That's my benchmark. And how are you today? That's just a question about pronouns and terms. Some of those pages you might have got, I think I took out part of it for this. That'll kind of walk you through that there's some difference.
Well, I just forgot my charger.
Oh, you can't come in then. Yeah. It's ours now.
Thank you. Sorry.
No need to be sorry. We're happy that you are here. You too.
This is mostly like stuff in my free time, right?
Yeah, it's 310 question primarily, but it kind of crosses over here, as will many other things that over the next couple of weeks. But the idea was, we're kind of saying, well, how do you know it's a determiner versus a pronoun? And so here's where the difference kind of shows up. And so we've got possessive pronouns. These are really the possessive pronouns there. These are determinants. Yeah, if you look at it. And over here, we've got some other problem because in this case, it's the same words. But it depends on where these are used and which ones of these are used. Because if you say, this is my paper, this is my paper. My is a determinant, which is talking about the paper. But if I say this is mine, I'm referring to the noun phrase my paper, in which case mine is replacing that noun phrase. So it becomes a pronoun.
But you like written words, right? Maybe it works in more.
Yeah, well, then you have the thing about you idiot.
Yeah.
So I went out and looked up, what is this you idiot? Basically, idiot would be the noun phrase.
Yeah.
Okay. You is addressing the person you're talking to. So it's not really a pronoun per se. And the whole thing together is kind of a, what's the one we said we want? Interjection.
Yeah.
You idiot. So kind of a weird situation, but it's not a sentence. And you know, pronoun to address somebody is supposed to talk about. How confusing is that? So tell me.
I don't know.
Anyway, go through the exercise. You might find it interesting and figure out what the pattern is. Because there's a clear pattern when you look at a pronoun versus a determinant. Right, Diana?
Yep.
Okay, see, she knows. We're good. I kind of left it out there so that back through it and explain it for a long time. So people don't get confused. Oh man, we're 1 minute late. It's that'll go on my evaluation. Does not start class on time and goes over. Miserable failure. Okay. Well, like I said the other day, on my collection of homework. So let's do homework again today. Should have a handout. And we should have a exercise B, 0.7. Yeah, there was exercise B right there, and then there was the handout. No, that one's going to talk about. It was the one from Thursday, a week ago. How are you? Oh, I asked you already. You said you were fine, right? You were fine? Okay. A lot of extra work though. I hate extra work. Oh,
This is, I can't read it.
yeah, cool enough. And. Yep. You have them both? Man, you guys do all the hard stuff. Read right in. Man, I did all that effort of typing it, and then you go write it out on your own. I don't understand it. It isn't over. I give you one already. How are you? Super. Hi, Phil. How are you? Never better. Got that one? How about exercise B? Cool enough. There you go. There you go. You got them both? All right. How about you, Electro Girl? Gee, look at that. iPad or is it something? I didn't even write on the iPad, but you certainly can. Hi there. What's happening? You came to work? You don't work at night, do you? Good. I hate you working now. Okay, let's see. So here, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, still missing 2. Arpon, you raised an interesting question on Tuesday. You said, Are all, you said something like, are all borrowed words nouns? And so I went out looking around because I thought that was a pretty interesting question. Never thought much about it. They aren't all nouns, but they almost always, most of them are. I went out and looked at several lists, and most of them were nouns. Here's some, I looked at one list from Dutch, and there were several verbs like drill, croon, hail, and loiter. And schlep. I don't know if you've ever heard the word schlep, if they've ever used schlep. It's like carrying something around or taking something a long way, schlepping. That's from Yiddish and German before that. And then I found mammoth, which might be a noun, but it can also be an adjective, and diesel's the same thing, could be a noun. But your point, that it seemed like almost all of them are nouns, seems to be true. Very few other words. So, cool. I promised I'd tell you. You with me? Yes. That was an interesting thing. I was reading a long article this morning on that. And it says once it gets into common usage, people seem to forget that it came from someplace else. Like the word Finnish came from French. But we use it ourselves, and we used it for so long that everybody loses it. What you can do is you can go back into a dictionary, online dictionary usually, and they'll have a place at the bottom where it asks for origins, and you can go in there and look it up and see if it's there. Or if faced with the question, there are lots of websites that are just borrowed word lists. You can go there too. Oh, man, I hate these things. Did you guys all vote on the survey about masks? Did you? Oh, well, it was online. Should we still continue wearing masks? My vote was absolutely not. Did you do the homework? All right. Okay, so today's date is what, the 31st, the end of March, rolling into April. I would like to kind of just get the homework for it next time, because there's a lot of things I want you to know. Okay, so for Tuesday, don't forget the part 2 of the project is due. Typewritten, hard copy handed in at the beginning of class on Tuesday. I sent you a handout that we're going to talk about a little bit today, the constituency test handout. Yes, ma'am?
How can we do those little brackets and stuff for the methodology? Like,
Like which brackets? Just the square brackets?
no, I mean, like the.
Oh, you don't have to do that. That's not even a part of it. You're just identifying stuff. You don't have to draw the trees.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something you may never do again, but you could use it to show your students so that they start to get the idea. But nonetheless, that isn't a requirement. So that's due on Tuesday. I sent you a constituency test handout. All I want you to really look at on that handout for right now is just the top 3 things. There's a section called general test. And all we're going to look at initially is going to be the general test. Okay? So the stuff that's below it is certainly something we see a lot more in 310. We may cover it. But for right now, the general test is all you really need to kind of pay attention to. I sent you an excerpt out of a book that I use on the graduate class for this one, but it talks about constituency and it does a good job on it. I circled several parts. All you got to do is really worry about the circled parts. The stuff on clauses and phrases and various things you may find useful later. But for right now, the circled parts is what I'm interested in. I also sent you a phrasing constituency practice handout, which I don't know if I brought a copy to here or not, but that should be done on for Tuesday. Now, remember a couple of things. One, in week 11 on the syllabus, I said you could take out this part about reading pages 63 to 69. That's next week or week 11. I am kind of replacing it with this to begin with, and then there'll be one more out of this book later. But drop that off of there, and then for anybody who is wondering about it, the drop date is next Friday. Okay. So if there's anybody who's thinking about dropping, maybe you want to talk to me before you do that. Pretty sure that's the right thing to do. But if you do want to do it, that's the last day you can do it and get doubles. Okay, questions on this? Nope. Okay, very good. So let's take a quick look then at a review of the stuff that's on page 50. And that was the phrase structure rules. Remember, I said these are something I really want you to have a good feel for. Because as you do it, it's going to help you when we start breaking sentences down and analyzing. Okay? So, the first one, the simplest one is every sentence has two parts. In grade school, they told you those two parts were a subject and a verb, or sometimes they'll say a subject and a predicate, right? Well, we've got the same thing here. We're just putting it in linguistics and syntax terms. Every sentence has to at least have a noun phrase and a verb phrase. Okay? Now, here, if you're taking notes, I want you to write something down about the verb phrase. Okay? The verb phrase starts from the beginning. Now, it could be the verb or it could be an adjective, adverb. We'll see that in just a minute. But it's going to take you all the way to the end of the sentence. Okay? It's not going to go a couple of words like the verb, he ran rapidly, and then stop there if it's really he ran rapidly all day long. Everything from the time we start that verb phrase until we get to the end is the verb phrase. And I took a course like 10, maybe 15 years ago. And had I not remembered that and remembered to ask, I would have failed that test bigger than Stuttgart, because I kept wanting to go in there and say, okay, it's the verb and it's direct object or something. No, it starts at anything modifying the verb and then goes to the end of the sentence. Okay, and that's going to be important. I don't want you to forget that. All right. So every sentence has to have a noun phrase and a verb phrase. The noun phrases get a little more complicated because we can pick up extra words along the way. For instance, we might pick up a determiner. The fact that it's in parentheses, so don't forget, means that it's optional. So we don't always have one. I went home, no determiner. We may actually have adjective phrases. Actually, here we might have more than one, but for right now, we're only really looking at, we've got an adjective phrase. And so what might we have in there? The big house, the gray house, big and gray house. That would have two adjective phrases. The big gray, that would be another one of those, house. And what might we have for a prepositional phrase here? That we could add on to that. The big gray house on the corner would work perfectly. In the city would work good. On Elm Street would work fine. So there's lots of ways we can finish that off. But again, we may not have a prepositional phrase or an adjective phrase or determiner. We may have some, we may have none. But we have to have the one thing that's there, the head word, and then a noun phrase that's the noun. Okay? Question? Now, we just finished talking about the verb phrase, so I said it early so I can repeat it again. But that is, a verb phrase may start with some kind of a modifier of the verb. Quickly ran. Right? Well, in that particular case, the verb phrase starts with quickly. Quickly ran But then it's gonna go to the end of the sentence, no matter how many things are, or how few things are here, it's gonna go to the end of the sentence. So quickly ran home in the rain. What's the verb phrase? Where does the verb phrase end? In the rain. It ends with rain, right? It's everything. It's not just quickly ran home in the rain. It's the whole thing. Okay, don't forget that. It'll come back to bite you. Okay? Now, we said we might have an adverb phrase. And I want you to remember, parentheses show optional, but the yellow stuff is something you need to pay attention to because for whatever reason, your book left it out. And I want you to remember, we've got adverb phrases in some of these sentences. And so the yellow stuff wasn't in your book. You should either notate it in your book if you're writing there, or make sure that it's in your notes. Just like a noun phrase, we have to have the head word that's a verb. And then after that, we might have various things. He ran in the rain. Maybe we don't put anything here, we just go straight to that. We might, in many cases, have a noun phrase, or we might have an adjective phrase right there. Let's see, he ate steak. Steak would be a noun phrase. The sky is blue. That would be an adjective phrase. In the first one, the verb was eat. In the second one, it's is. And so you can see that we probably aren't going to have both. The only place we have both is if this adjective phrase was buried inside that noun phrase, like we saw up here. We might have a prepositional phrase at the end saying where it's happening or when it happened. And finally, we might have another adverb phrase at the end. It could be all of these or it could be any subset as long as we have the verb. John swam, perfectly good sentence. John would be the noun, the verb would be swam. That's all we need in that sentence. We might have more information, but it's a perfectly good sentence even if we don't. The adjective phrase, it's usually going to be an adjective. We have to have an adjective, right? We've already said that. For every phrase, we have to have a head word of that type. And we oftentimes will have something here like an intensifier. We could have marked that as an adverb, but I left it the way your book marks it as an intensifier. You probably want to think about that as an adverb because what is it that modifies adjectives? It's not other adjectives, it's adverbs. And so very deep here. And that would be very angry. Or it could be something like minimally invasive. So all of those things, that's what we're looking for. An adjective phrase tends to be pretty simple. Adverb phrases, once again in yellow, has to have an adverb, but we may have another adverb in front of it. Exceedingly quickly would be an example where we've got two. Exceedingly is working very much like that intensifier, but it's intensifying the adverb quickly as opposed to minimally invasive up there. Finally, got prepositional phrases. Start with a preposition. Almost always it starts with a prepositional phrase. Occasionally, it might start off with another word, like an adverb. We could say, it rains in the morning. Rains in the morning is the verb phrase. In the morning is the prepositional phrase. But if we add something to that, like the word usually, well, that usually is going to be part of that prepositional phrase also. Okay? So we're looking, and almost the ones you're going to see in this class, I think, are always going to just be starting with a preposition. The important thing to remember is they also have a noun phrase in there. went to the store, slept in class, and various other things that we might put there. But preposition and then a noun phrase. Despite the controversy, for instance. Despite is a preposition, one of the weird ones. Okay. Couple what final examples. Water freezes. That's about as simple as we're going to get. Noun phrase, verb phrase. We can expand it out. We can go, the fresh water in the lake freezes completely solid during the winter. Where does the noun phrase and the verb phrase separate? Where's the separation between the main noun phrase and the verb phrase? Let's see if we got. Why, yes, it would be. I didn't think you were supposed to answer a question with a question, but I guess it would. Yes. So we've got the fresh water in the lake. Well, we talked about the fact that we could have lived with just water, right? Water freezes. Here we've got the determiner, fresh, adjective phrase. Water is the noun. In the lake is that prepositional phrase, in the lake, right? You see how those pieces are falling together? And then we have to look at the verb phrase and we go, freezes. All right, well, that's the verb, right? So we're going to start here. And how far are we going to go? And how far are we going? All the way to the end. Freezes. How does it freeze? Completely. So there we've got freezes, completely, solid, completely solid, actually. So it's freezes, completely solid, and during the winter. So here we've got an adjective phrase with an adverb intensifier. And freezes, adjective phrase, during the winter puts us into the prepositional phrase. And what's inside that prepositional phrase? Lorraine, what do we got to call out with that prepositional phrase during the winter? The noun, what is the noun phrase? Nope. Oh, you're right. The winter. We actually have a word there that's describing winter. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the homework that you had. And let us see. I think we did. Oh yeah, I did too heavy. Good. I got the key. What did I tell you when I say we're going to when I want you to list out the phrases? What was the key word there? List, right? So you see, I can do it. You can too, right? Don't try drawing square brackets around it. Just list them out. And so when the first one we had, the woman was a noun phrase, combs her hair was the verb phrase, and her hair was another noun phrase. Interestingly, in both cases with the noun phrase, we've got the determiner there. So we're not going to try to break determiners out any further. Determiners will be a part of a noun phrase. And if you look up here, where can a noun determiner go? The only place we've got it listed is right there on noun phrases. So then we take the child stood next to the fence. Sebastian, get that one for us. What do we got in there? The child stood near the fence. Cool. So what are those? Okay, so that's the noun phrase, probably the subject noun phrase, actually, right? Cool. Yep. Right? Great. So you start to begin to see we've got that hierarchical formation there of phrases within phrases within phrases. The runners near the finish line. That's Diana. It's number 3. You don't have it? Okay. Jen, 3.
runners that
Okay. What's missing there, though? Something I've tried to emphasize. Well, the form of the verb phrase. You said the neared, right? Well, what did I say about verb phrases? They start with the verb and. So what is the verb phrase? Great. And then the finish line is a noun phrase, like you said. There's one more inside there, perhaps. Depends on how you want to think about it. There's either a noun finish line, which would be kind of like a compound noun, or we have what? The finish line, but we could have another phrase in there. Depending on how you're looking at it, we could feasibly have adjective phrase finished, right? Really all depends on how you're thinking it through. And I'll hopefully not cause that problem on the test, but I'll have to give you leeway if we got it, right? Okay, so I think, Kendra, we're next to you. 4. I went to the store and bought eggs. Oh, you got the hard one. I went to the store. Is it really? Is it really? Break it up a little. Is there any noun phrases at the beginning of verb phrases? No, it comes after the verb, right? Yeah. So what's the first noun phrase? No, because then you got the verb in there. Because if I look at the noun phrase, if I look at the noun phrase, there's no verbs in there, right? But there is a noun or a pronoun. We talked about that, right? The fact that we're going to call pronouns noun phrases. So if that were the case, the noun phrase is I. Now I'm interested in knowing what the verb phrase is. Went to the store. I think that's certainly one way of looking at it. I went to the store. But we also talked about the fact that we might want to think about the verb phrase starting with the verb and going all the way to the end. So here's why this one's complicated. We have 2 verb phrases, right? And we have an and in there. So in this particular case, we could have gone in there and said, we've got 2 verb phrases that were wrong one. Went to the store, and another one that said bought eggs. Or we could call it all one verb phrase and say it's a conjoined verb phrase because it's got a conjunction, and the verb phrase in that case would be went to the store and bought some eggs. Once again, you can make the argument either way. And so I would have to deal with that on the test. There's a couple more noun phrases though. Yes. Eggs, exactly. So as I look at this, I would probably go in here. Let me see how I wrote it. I wrote I, the store, and eggs are noun phrases, clearly. A prepositional phrase is to the store. And we have verb phrases, either one conjoined verb phrase that is went to the store and bought eggs, or I've got went to the store, I have a conjunction and I've got another verb phrase, bought egg. I kind of like the conjoined idea, but we'll work through that as we go along. Okay? So lots of phrases in that one. Oh man. Ariana, got an easy. Janet left quickly.
I put Janet as a noun phrase.
Yeah.
Left quickly as a verb phrase.
Yeah.
And then left to be a verb phrase.
What?
Left.
Left? No.
Okay.
Left quickly is the verb phrase. You already called that out.
Quickly could be adverb phrase.
Yes, it could very well be. It would be an adverb phrase. So we've got to go in here. We find left. skip all this other junk, and all we've got is the Howie lesson, the adverb of manner. You owe her now, because you got the easy one, she had the hard one. Oh, I switched that. The fox was quick. Mandy, what's the noun phrase there?
Versus the fox.
The fox, correct, right? It's got a determiner and it's got a noun, just like we would expect it might have. And then what else do we have?
The verb
Yes,
phrase,
the verb phrase. What is the verb phrase?
was quick.
Great. In this case, we have was quick, right? Just like that. And then what do you have left?
The
Verb. And then did it have a noun phrase? Nope.
the preposition.
Does it have a prepositional phrase? Huh?
It does not.
It does not. Does it have one of these? Quick. Is quick an adjective? It is. So in this case, there's one of the examples where we've got a verb and an adjective phrase instead of a verb and a noun phrase. That's all of those, huh? Cool. Let's go to the book. Maybe they're easier. Because, you know, Ashley's next and she wants an easy one. Am I right? Okay. All right. It's always good to say, am I right? Yeah. All right. We are looking at number 1 here. We've got A through L. We're looking at what is the main verb type? What is the main phrase structure in each one of those? I've got ice floats. Well, not really. You know why? Look at the verb phrase. Does it have what kind of a word is ice? Person, place, or thing. Noun. Is there a noun phrase at the beginning of verb phrases? No. So if ice is a noun, what would ice be? It would be a noun phrase, and then what would the verb phrase be? Real short. Floats, right? And what is that? That's actually this one, right? The noun phrase, the verb phrase. It's a whole sentence, right? What does ice do? Ice floats. So that one would be a sentence. And it has a noun phrase in it, and it has a verb phrase in it. But as an overall thing, it would be a sentence. Let's see. Isabel. The red car. It's a noun phrase overall. Do you see any other phrases in there? What is the adjective phrase? No. The adjective phrase is red all by itself. Car, red. Adjective phrases are inside a noun phrase, not the other way around. Okay, let us see. Christina, I've got C. It is a noun phrase. Man, it doesn't get any easier than that. I've always wanted to be a noun phrase, and now I am one. Okay. D, in a bad mood, Lupe. It is a prepositional phrase. Now I'm going to make it hard for you. What other kinds of phrases are in there? It wasn't part of the question, so that's why I'm being. A bad mood? Okay. A bad mood is what? Yes, it's a noun phrase. The mood is the word, the most important word. A and bad are just kind of describing it. There's one more phrase in there. A bad mood. Nope, mood by itself isn't going to work. A isn't going to work because we said determiners always go with a noun phrase. We're not going to call them out separately. What kind of a word is bad? So it's probably a adjective phrase. Do you see it? And don't get confused and go, bad mood is the adjective phrase. That's not, because it's going to be bad is the adjective and mood. Bad mood, a bad mood is the whole noun phrase. Arpod. Oh, in a very bad mood. Yeah, it is a prepositional phrase. What other phrases are inside there? Yeah, what is that noun phrase? I'm sorry? Nope, because we got to start with a, right? A very bad mood. So all we did was we took hers in a bad mood. Now we've got a very bad mood. So all we did was we made the noun phrase a little bit longer, right? How did we do that? Well, we took this adjective phrase here, we put an intensifier on it, right? So we still have in a bad mood, in a very bad mood, a very bad mood. Bad is an adjective, but that's not complete. Now we have a bigger adjective phrase, which is very bad. Exactly. Oh. Selma, I have gave a party for Mary. Yes, it is. Gave. It seems to be the most important thing, right? Gave was the act, and the other stuff is just basically saying what they gave. And then we could say, what would be the noun phrase? Probably a party for Mary. That would work here, right? A party for Mary. And then we have Mary in there with a noun phrase inside a prepositional phrase for. So that one got kind of complicated. Let's see. Was a fool. Was a fool. It is. It's a verb phrase. A fool. You think that's a noun phrase? It's, yeah, it's a noun phrase, right? A fool. Cool. Was extremely silly. Cynthia. Was extremely silly. It is. I think it's, yes. Actually, you're right. And then there's one more. Exactly. See, I about screwed that up and said it was both an adverb, but you're absolutely right. Glad somebody knows what we're doing. Ran. Oh, this is a tough one. Yes, very good verb phrase. He ran. Is that a perfectly good sentence? Don't have to say where, how, or anything else. It's just he ran. What did he do? He ran. Those people hit that man on the head. Those people hit that man on the head. That's you, dude. What kind of a word is hit? So there can't be a noun phrase all by itself, right? I knew I was once in a while. I sent you home talking to my wife. He was correct. You know, I married her. She thought I was Mr. Right. And then when we got married, we found out that it was really, she's always, Mrs. Always right. That's the way it works. Just take a lesson. Okay. A lesson in life. Those people hit that man on the head. That was tough. What does that sound like to you? Does it sound like a phrase? Those people hit that man on the head. You'd still say, yeah. Yeah, what? A noun phrase? Okay, let me see. We've got some verb hit, you told me, right? Are we gonna have a verb in a noun phrase? Those people is the noun phrase. Yeah, that's the noun phrase, those people, but not the whole thing. Then what happens? It what? All by itself. Hit that person on the head or something like that. That man on the head. What we've got here is a sentence. It's a little bit longer than the one we saw where ice floats. But in this case, we've got a noun phrase, those people, right? And then we've got a verb phrase, hit that man on the head. Well, what have we got in there? We've got hit, it's the verb. That man would be the noun phrase that might be there. And on the head is way over here with the prepositional phrase. So this one's a whole sentence. Ran with difficulty. Oh, this one's going to catch me and call me a liar. But okay. It's a verb phrase. What about the last part? With difficulty. Oh, that's still true. I haven't lied yet. Difficulty. With difficulty. Oh no. Again, what's with that? What's with difficulty? No, she said adverb, so you gotta give me another one.
All right.
Yes, it is. And difficulty is a difficulty, a difficulty or difficult. Difficulty. Difficulty. What kind of word is difficulty? Nope. Who said noun? Exactly. With difficulty. What is a prepositional phrase going to look like? Preposition with a noun phrase. Prepositional phrase is with difficulty. The noun phrase in there is? You were right. Difficulty. Okay. All right. So you see how that worked? Isn't that strange? Yeah. Ran with difficulty. I looked at that and I thought difficultly first, which would have been wrong, and then I'd have been a liar. But I wasn't, and therefore we aren't. Well, let's see. It's your turn for the difficult one. Ran extremely quickly.
It's a verb phrase,
Yes.
and then you got ran. Wait, and then you got extremely quickly.
Yes.
I put it as an adverb phrase,
Yes. And?
and then you got quickly.
No. Don't go there. I think I used it. I think I pretty much used it when I first got it. I think if I'm not mistaken, I said extremely quickly. I may be wrong. So this is an adverb phrase where the adverb is here and it's got another adverb or adverb phrase in there. The intensifier. Okay?
Mhm.
All righty. Yes. No. No, it's ran extremely quickly. So what I would have, ran extremely quickly is the whole verb phrase, right? You start with the verb and go to the end. So ran extremely quickly, right? Ran extremely quickly. And we could say extremely quickly is an adjective phrase. I'm sorry, an adverb phrase, right? Because we said it could have an adverb in the front. And therefore, adverb, this actually extremely is an adverb phrase all by itself. It's just built inside this one.
So it is, okay.
VP, ABVP, ABVP again.
Okay, got it.
Got it? Good. Questions on that? Is that weirded anybody up? Anybody want to quit now? Yes, Gally does, but no.
Question? We're gonna move on to something a little more difficult. Right now, we've kind of covered the phrase structure rules again. And now what we want to do, we want to start asking ourselves the question. We said a phrase is going to be one or more words to go together. And we said a couple of days ago, just because we've got two words coming together or five words coming together doesn't necessarily make it a phrase. Right? So if I were to take this sentence, the big dogs eat raw meat in the corner, is the big a phrase? No, it's missing something, right? It's missing the big dogs. Similarly, eat raw is not really a phrase either, because it really should be eat raw meats. Am I right? And dogs eat, well, we've said this several times this morning even, noun phrases don't have verb phrases in them, and verb phrases don't typically start with a noun. So in all three of those cases, they are words that come together, but none of them are really a phrase. They're just words that are sitting next to each other, coincidentally. Our big question at this point is, how do we tell phrases from random word groups? And so what we're going to talk about today is something called constituency. And that is going to take us back to your one handout that I gave you, this one, the very short one. And we're going to see that a constituent, which in many cases we could be synonymous with a phrase or synonymous with a clause, but a constituent is going to be a group of one or more words that function as a single unit inside a larger structure. It's a fancy way for us to start getting to the idea of what is a phrase or what is a clause. A word or group of words that function as a single unit within a larger hierarchical structure. That would be phrases inside phrases, phrases inside clauses, clauses inside sentences. It's all hierarchy that builds itself up. Well, what are the tests? There are 4 tests, but I take one of them out because it's kind of dangerous and it gets people messed up. So I took it off of the write-up that I gave you in the other handout. The last 3 are these 3 that are up here at the top. And so if I look at those, the general test, for us to prove that a group of words is a constituent, it has to pass one, only one, but it can't pass more of the following rules. When we look at a sentence, we want to go in there, we're going to have this, it'll be a big chunk of the first part of the final, is you'll have a sentence there that you're going to have to go in there and pull out all the constituents. We're going to have some practice at doing that over time, but it'll be an important thing for you to grasp. So the 3 things that we've got here, did I put them in the same order? Nah, I don't do that. We have movement. We can sometimes take a whole constituent or a whole phrase, or maybe even a whole clause, and move it as a whole to another part of the sentence, and everything still works fine, still means the same thing, and it's still grammatical. Okay? I could say, I sat in the corner. Pretty good one, right? Simple sentence. I sat in the corner. I could say, in the corner, I sat. Still grammatical, still means the same thing. No real change at all, just the fact that I moved it around. That would be a case of movement proving that in the corner is a constituent. In our case, it'd be a prepositional phrase, but it'd still be a constituent. Another one that I use a lot, this one's really good for, particularly for nouns. Proform substitution, where I can take a pronoun or some other single word element and substitute it for a noun phrase, or sometimes even for an adverb phrase, or for a prepositional phrase. But the idea is I could substitute a single word in here and take that out and still have basically the same meaning. Okay. Proform substitution. I might take that prepositional phrase in the corner. When I said I sit in the corner, can anybody think of a way for me to replace in the corner and still have the same basic sentence? I sat, huh? There. Is that what you said? Or here? Oh, no, then we really have changed it. I just sit in the corner. I'm not allowed a chair. I get the floor. But nonetheless, I could replace in the corner with the word there. That would be a proform substitution. It's not always pronouns. It's more a matter of having a single word substitute for that constituent. And then finally, we have an answer to a standalone question or a standalone answer to a question. Let's take that and let's answer a question about I sat in the corner. I want to prove that in the corner is a constituent using the standalone answer. How could I do that? You want to be able to use in the corner as a standalone answer to a question. Where did he sit? Or where do you sit? And I could say in the corner, right? So in the corner, I can't say, where do you sit? The corner. You can't say, where do you sit? Corner. You got to say the whole prepositional phrase, in the corner, okay? And in that case, I've got standalone answer. And in this case, that idea of in the corner passed all three tests. I could move it to the front. In the corner I sat. I could substitute it with a single word like I sat there. And we could use it as an answer to a question. Where does he sit? In the corner. Okay, so that's how these things work. So let's continue on here a little bit and remember a couple things. First, a constituent is considered just a building block of syntactic structure, meaning it's a building block for the sentence. Okay, or a building block for a bigger phrase. And these things function as a part of a sentence. They function also as a whole, so you can't really pick out a single word out of the phrase and still have the phrase really. So, building blocks of syntactic structures, syntactic units that function as part of a sentence. And we often use the word phrase and constituent, sometimes even clause and constituent interchangeably. You'll hear me do it a lot. And I'm just reminding you of one more thing. A linguistic syntax, a phrase is going to be one or more words. One or more words. So let's take another example. We've seen something similar when we talked about the phrase, but look on this column, constituents. And much like phrases and sentences above phrases is they are hierarchically constructed. If I take this question or this sentence, he ran home in the rain. We've got lots of constituents here. One of those is a pronoun. He. Well, who ran home in the rain? He. That answers the question. Another way I do pronouns is kind of the reverse. Can I take a person or a person or a noun phrase and replace it in there for the he? Like the red-haired boy. Okay. The red-haired boy ran home in the rain. Either one of those two ways is how you kind of prove that proform substitution. You prove to yourself that he is a constituent. Ran home in the rain. Well, I said that we're going to start with a verb and go all the way to the end. So ran home in the rain is going to be a constituent. Ran home in the rain. And how could we prove that? Well, we can't move it. Ran home in the rain key. That won't work. Let's see. I think the only way I can really think about doing that is take that whole ran home in the rain and change it to he did. Did. Oftentimes a did or a do can replace an entire verb phrase. But he did. I can ask, where did he run? Home. So home would be, I guess, a noun phrase in this case. He ran home. But where did he run? Home. So I can call that out. And when did he run? Or how did he run? Either one would be in the rain. Who ran home? Oh, okay. Who ran home in the rain? He. Yeah. I would have rather had it with did there, but the pronouns are a little funky because the pronouns are already replacing something bigger. Now to prove it was a constituent, you almost have to make it bigger to prove it. But you could have changed it with any name. John ran home. Now inside this one, as we already saw before, we've got in the rain, and inside in the rain, we've got the rain. In what did he run? Or in what did he run home? The rain. Or he ran home in that, and if you did that, you would generally pull it up and say that is replacing the rain. Okay. Now, here's a better one. Sentence is the Fulberg Colonel from Korea read the books about the war. The Fulberg in this case is going to be in it. Okay. So kind of where we started with Cynthia this morning, saying where is that thing split between the main noun phrase and the main verb phrase? We can now address that question to Isabel and say, where does that split the noun phrase and the verb phrase? Exactly. So it's going to split it right in here, right? So we're going to have a long noun phrase that is the Fulberg Colonel from Korea. Does that fit our three structure rules? Does a determiner, Fulberg's an adjective, noun is colonel, and we can also have a prepositional phrase. And the prepositional phrase, interestingly, has another noun phrase in it. Fits our rule, right? And read the books about the war. Let's see. Ashley, does that fit our verb phrase rule? Sure. It's got read as the verb. The books about the war is the noun phrase. The books about the war is the whole thing. And then we've also got a prepositional phrase inside this noun phrase, but it all works. All right. Okay, so we look at this hierarchy here and we go, the noun phrase is the Fulberg Colonel from Korea, and read the books about the war is the verb phrase. And we split that up and we go, okay, I have an adjective phrase here, Fulberg, inside the noun phrase. And I've also got a prepositional phrase inside the noun phrase from Korea, right? That works. And read, what did he read? Well, the noun phrase is the books about the war. Are there any lower level things in it? Well, sure, there's still some things for us to dig out. One is Korea, right? The noun phrase that's going to end up having to go inside the prepositional phrase. Everybody follow that one? Anybody not? And then we've got the books about the war. Well, about the war could be part of that noun phrase. It's like that. And there's one left. What's the one that's left? Kendra, this is easy for you. The war. Noun phrase, right? All of our sentences, you look at these things, they're built this way. We could go in there and say, from where was the Fulberg Colonel? Korea. That'll tell us that's a constituent. Which colonel? It's the colonel from Korea. That gives that a constituent. Which kind of a colonel? Fulberg. What books? The ones about the war. About what? The war. And what did he read? Or we could say, we could break this into a pro form substitution, go, the full bird kernel from Korea read them. Or the full bird kernel from Korea did. Or he did. I mean, there's lots of ways for us to test it, but the idea is we can test it and pass one or more of the test. Okay? Now, if you can pass all three, that's really great. You can be real sure you got it right. But if you only pass one, that's all that's necessary. So if I give you this one, we saw this sentence a minute ago. We said, dogs eat, that isn't one, and a corner is, the corner eat or eat. All of those various other groupings of words don't really match. What eats meat? Or who eats meat? Either one could do that. The big dog's in the corner. Well, that tells us this whole thing here is probably going to be the noun phrase. We're not going to say they in the corner or they the corner. We're going to grab that whole piece. The big dog's in the corner. It's that one. We could also use pro form substitution and say they eat meat, couldn't we? One single word replaces all of that and not partial. Where do they eat? In the corner. Noun for prepositional phrase inside the big dog's in the corner. But in the and corner eat and don't end up being things that we can find as constituents because we can't replace in their corner. We can't do that. Corner eat, well, we've seen a lot of times where the noun phrase doesn't begin the verb phrase, so that one won't work. And what do they eat? Or what do they do? They eat meat, right? That's all the idea of standalone answer to a question. If we take the same one, we want to look for pro form substitution. The big dog's in the corner, well, we already covered that. Got ahead of myself on the slides. They eat meat, right? The dog's there. So that there kind of gives us in the corner. We could change meat to it. And we could say the big dog's in the corner do replacing eat meat. We wouldn't go in there and say, oh, they just replaced the word eat, so the big dog's in the corner do meat. We could say the big dog's in the corner do. Got the idea of pro form substitution? This one's one of my favorites. It works really the best. And then one that we have left to look at is movement. And this is a really good test for some things. Typically, the things that are going to be able to be moved are going to be prepositional phrases or adverbs, an adverb phrase. Those two things can oftentimes move around in a sentence. So I've got this new sentence, the furry squirrels climb trees in the forest. Well, I could, if I want to look for that in the forest and look at it from the standpoint of movement, I could say the furry squirrels in the forest climb trees. Still makes sense, right? Still basically the same meaning, nothing really changed. We could move it to the front. In the forest, the furry squirrels climb trees. But we can't just move the squirrels. Notice that? We have to move the whole thing, the furry squirrels. If we were going to use pro form substitution, we have to substitute them for the furry squirrels, not them furry. The squirrels by itself cannot move. It would have to somehow be the furry squirrel. Noun phrases don't usually move very much. And furry the squirrels, I can't just move the furry up there either, right? It's basically going to end up staying there. The thing that can move, which is very typical, is the prepositional phrase. And they move around quite a lot. Or adverbs. So basically, as we look at the constituency test, we're looking to try to find out if we have various types of phrases. And And these phrase structure rules are going to be quite important for you in the final exam, or for the things that we're going to be doing here for the next couple of weeks. So you got to really get an idea around these phrase structure rules. And you've got to get an idea around the constituents. Those two things can be real time for the next. I will say, right from the beginning, these 5 rules do not give you every possible combination, but they probably give you well up into the 90% of the phrases that we run into that fit into the rule. As soon as you start to take into all of that, title it. Okay. So let's take the handout that you've got. Did you bring the handout with you, the new one? And that would be the one with, I think it says something about phrase constituent. What'd you say? Yeah, I didn't bring my copy. Oh. Yes, that's it. So let me borrow yours. I'll stand here with you. Okay, so let's go in here and look for the phrases. My first suggestion is that you go in there and you list the phrases out. You look them up there. Selma, did you hit the 2 light switches back there? Not the 2 of them upward. There you go. All right. You know what I think about $1,000? You can get the B and PowerPoint, but it's in base motor with light. So that's really $1,000. It's the only thing I learned. Hey, okay, so what we got here is the frog suddenly became a green prince. Kendra, can you share your so give me a noun phrase. Give me a noun phrase. Arpod, what's a noun phrase? The frog. I like it. And if I wanted to ask you for a test, if you could prove that, what test might you use? The pronoun one, right? The proform substitution. Is that what you said? It. Right? So yeah, that's excellent. So we could easily change that to it, and everything would still work. So I'm going to just put PS for proform substitution. All right. What is the verb phrase here? Lorraine, what's the verb phrase? Where does it start? Suddenly. Great. And let's see, how far does it go? Prince, right? Now, this one, these are always a little bit hard, but what happened to the frog? Suddenly turned into a prince. That's one. That's one way of doing it. Or the frog did. Probably wouldn't say suddenly. I suppose we could. But in that case, you've got suddenly in this, and I'm going to say, no, it's a question. Answer to a question. Suddenly became a green prince. What else do we have in there? Any other? That's our fancy phone system that lets it ring on your computer. However, you can't hang up. Anyway, so that one got your attention. Anybody still asleep? Isabel, you awake now? Okay, all right. So suddenly became green prince. Give me another phrase that's buried in there, Gally. A green prince. Okay, a green prince. Oops. What kind of a test might we use? Okay, what did the frog suddenly turn into? A green prince, right? Great, so that one would be another A Q. Let's see, what else do we have? Ashley, give me something, give me something, give me something. Does that make you nervous when I do that? Give you something, give me something, give me something? No? Okay, good. Don't want to make anybody nervous. My wife says she can't drive when I'm in the car because I make her nervous. We've been married 46 years. I don't think she's nervous. Anyway. Ashley, give me something. Well, see, that's actually part of the one we already came with. We already have there. So I wouldn't break it down any further because we're going to start the verb phrase with whatever modifies the verb. What's modifying the verb? Yes. Yes, so many questions. Yes, certainly. Certainly. Okay, here we are. So we got suddenly. Now, how could we prove that suddenly is a constituent? You want to give me a guess? We got three things. We got movement, we got proform substitution, we got answer to a question. I can think of two that'll work. Isabel. A question. How fast? Suddenly. Okay, I can live with that. So we can do answer to a question. How fast? There's another one. I can't think of a proform, so it must be movement. Could we move suddenly? We could say suddenly the frog became a green prince, or the frog became a green prince suddenly. We can move it all around. Everything seems to still work. Then I've got one last one, I think. What is the last phrase in there? You what? Oh, no, you're not supposed to have this stuff done. We're doing it now. Mandy, got one? One more phrase.
I don't have paper.
Okay. Oh, you don't have the paper. Got it. Okay. Isabel, what do you think? You look like you want to say something. What did we say about answering it? Exactly. We've got green. How would you tell?
What color was the font for the prince?
Yeah. What color was the prince? Did he turn into a green prince? Or was it the green frog?
No, it says the frog suddenly became a green prince.
Ah, great, a green prince. So there we go. Answer to a question. What color prince did he become? You see the idea here? You've got to find all of the phrases, but to find them, well, I should say constituents, but to find them, you need to apply the test. Once again, for this particular exercise, you only need to deal with the top three general tests. Okay? Questions? I started a minute late, so my 10 minutes is finished. Oh, heck, it's 4 minutes early. Oh, you got a question? What's the what? Oh, it would be like a group green would be a subconstituent inside here because it's a constituent of its own, right? So it's kind of a buried in there. Same thing with suddenly, part of the verb phrase, but it's also a subconstituent. If you want to think about that. Hierarchy, it's all in the hierarchy. Anybody else? Hit the bricks. I'm sorry? Oh, yes. Not super good. Here's the homework. I will see you Monday. I will see you Oh, yes, I forgot the little slips. Great. And good, everybody?
Not good, I'll be up there.
Oh, no one's complete. No, I'm still not complete. Oh, yes. Yep, very good. Did you get on the sheet there? Okay, question about the. And what? On this one, these are kind of like pulling together full compound work. So I would be looking for something that would be, this one is a great word. Workers of the word co is an affix that goes on the front. Co-workers would be full compound work. But something like this works well. Complete. This one, this is going to be a question.
The director of the daycare offered me a position. So right now I'm working at daycare.
So are you keeping early childhood?
As an assistant teacher.
Oh,
And then but like the classes aren't like really, the time is like only like one class per day.
oh, okay,
So
wow.
it's not really,
So it's not a lot to do, that's good.
I'm not like, it's not really, it's like almost like every, like the schedule is not really that good, but
Oh, no, is it hard teaching people at the same time while you're,
I'm not doing any lessons.
yeah, all the lessons and early, make sure that I know how to get through them. And the ones on the iPad are easier to get through, but the ones in the binder, sometimes you have to look around for special papers they need, so.
Yeah, I think that I would struggle with the lessons.
Yeah, lesson plan is not. It takes a lot of time. You're gonna have to do some lesson plans.
Yeah, that's what I did, and I was struggling with it.
Yeah.
When I took 3 tests.
Yeah.
It was the I was struggling. No. Yeah, it was remote.
Oh,
So I was also kind of struggling in the springtime too, and last fall.
so you don't know if you like early classes or do you think you want to go late?
Like I'm not interested until I even declare the major.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause yeah, that was also part of like the requirements for the major.
For which major?
It was for the early childhood.
Yeah, it's kind of going to for elementary, but
Oh, is that?
yeah, but I think it would be very helpful to have it. I think I'd rather teach, TESL course rather than much, a lot more kids in the regular classroom, so. That's what I'm doing. So, not minor, but,
Oh, you majoring?
yeah, I wonder what the school bus is doing here.
Oh, maybe like a 4 of us.
That's a good point.